The Mongoose Durham 26. I told you I was going to upgrade this bike, and I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'll get right to it, so make sure you're sitting down, because factory Mongoose Durham 26, transformation to Project Porkchop, a fully modified Mongoose Durham. And wow. I may have gone just a little overboard here. It started out with just a few spare 26er parts that I had laying around and developed into sort of a theme. So much gold that it's hard to film without reflections or lens flares. I used many new to KevCentral parts, so I'm going to get right to it, starting with the obvious because I know you want to know. Is that a new saddle? Well, yes it is. Thank you for noticing. But first, let's go over what's left of the factory Durham. There's the seat post clamp, and of course the aluminum frame. And then there's 3 sections of the shifter cable housing. Beyond that, all you see here is parts that I have hand selected. Like this seat post. This is a Bontrager comp seat post I picked up at the local bike shop. The factory seat post only 200 millimeters. This one 330 with an 8 millimeter offset, which puts the saddle in a better position for me. In this saddle, it's a Roadnado Eva with a red accent that I didn't plan, but looks like I actually did. I hope this works out because the looks, it's sleek. I went full Roadnado, as you'll see. After these pedals, you've seen these before, these are roost pedals. I purchased a second set just for this bike, but I can't find them, so I pulled these off of Project Sea Mist. And they're mounted to this crankset, and you guessed it, Roadnado, because I told you, there's a lot of it coming. I discovered the Roadnado brand via this crankset for $39.99. I thought, why not? I'll give it a shot. And so far, I'm impressed. These come with crank arm boots, and you can buy them with a chain ring, but they only have 34 and 36 tooth. So I took the cheap way out and brought my own chain ring, a Corky 32 tooth. These also gave me the opportunity to use the snail bolt covers that I've had forever. Another gold accent. Along with the crank arm boots, another unexpected bonus from the Roadnado, this CNC aluminum fixing bolt. There's also the included external bearing bottom bracket, all this for $39.99. I'll put links to all these parts down in the description, but don't buy this chain. It looks good, it's gold, but talk more about it in just a moment. At the back half of the drivetrain, a micro shift Acolyte derailleur, among the most affordable clutch derailleurs on the market. We love micro shift here at KevCentral, so impress us, Acolyte. The frame doodle though, that doesn't impress us. There's just no way to get around it, part of that Mongoose frame. The cassette, also Acolyte, an 8-speed. Now these are budget, so a bit heavy, 1 pound and 4 ounces, but wide range, a 12 to 46 tooth. How did I get a cassette onto the Durham? The new free hub, part of the new Wheelset, gold goodness in 26 inches. It's getting harder to find good budget 26er wheel sets that can accept a cassette. I finally lucked onto these Meijun MJ-A6s. For tires, I wanted something really good. Lots of grip. These Vigilantes, 26 by 2.30. The Vigilante, it's a WTB tire. These aggressive treads should really perk up the Durham on the trail. I know you're looking beyond those, and I'll get there, but for now, there's more Roadnado I need to talk about, like the handlebars. These are Roadnado Freedom Series, 720 millimeters wide. You can see a matching Roadnado stem that looks conspicuously like a wake stem. Roadnado also makes grips, but those were out of stock, so I ended up with these U4 Gold Keepers. These are made in Taiwan, and when I opened the box, I wasn't so sure about this octagon design, but spoiler, they're actually really good, and their gold trim blends perfectly with the new gold hydraulic brakes, Anchor hydraulics, which means zoom. Wait till you see the rotors and calipers. The Acolyte shifter completes the Acolyte group set for under $87. And okay, I know you've been patiently waiting, so let's talk about this fork. I've had this for quite a long time. It was ordered as an MZP, but it's actually a Himalo downhill fork. Double shoulder, and it brings to the Durham a rebound adjustment, compression adjustment, and it's also an air fork. Now, someone no doubt will comment about my stem spacer setup, but let me say, A, this is within acceptable usage, and B, this is what happens when someone, namely me, cuts the steerer too short. But I'm using that Roadnado stem and those Roadnado bars, so I had to make some adaptations. A little bit about this fork, it's gold, so bonus, and the travel. 140 millimeter rating, I measured 137. Is this overkill? Totally. Are there any secondary side effects? Yes, I'll talk about those in just a minute. And for a budget fork, this is made in Taiwan, so I expect more quality here, and it does appear to have that. and the lateral flex much better than I would have guessed. My cable management suboptimal. I installed the rear brake after I installed the fork, so we're just gonna have to deal with that. But it is a good segue to look at the rest of those Zoom brakes, because they are infamous for their do not loose it calipers. But here, oh so beautiful in gold, and how about these floating rotors? So many lens flares and reflections with all this gold, but in person this looks really good. Let me pause for a second for a couple of notes. The weight, 31 pounds, gold is heavy and so are downhill forks. And I talked about a secondary side effect from this fork. The original fork on this bike was around 60 millimeters of travel. This one up to 140. That changes the head tube angle, the new effective head tube angle, 65 degrees. And that's going to add a lot of extra stress to this frame, a very budget frame. So keep that in mind. I don't recommend anyone put these type of forks on this type of a bike, but of course I did so that you don't have to. You can watch safely from home, but let me tell you, this doesn't just look like a monster. Riders would never know the humble origins of this. I doubt anyone in a blind test would know this started out as a Mongoose Durham 26. And that's not just my opinion. The footage you're seeing is a friend riding the bike. He was instantly in love. Fitment, I'm 5'10". I was very cramped on the original Durham 26 configuration. In project form, I'm completely comfortable. It fits him perfectly though. He's 5'6". First impressions, we are a carbon copy of one another. We both feel it is agile, smooth, and aggressive. A lot of that is the double shoulder fork strength, at least on this trail, where some of this footage might as well be riding around on a city street because it's so smooth. But trust me, there are a lot of hidden routes that this is going over, but that fork is easily absorbing them. So far, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Now, of course, we're not riding downhill trails, we're on standard mountain bike trails, but so far, I like it. That Taiwan quality kind of shining through, at least here. And you just heard some shifts from that Acolyte shifter, which works as well as an Advent shifter. Kind of makes sense though, because they're priced about the same when it comes to the shifter. And they get back to the derailleur and the cassette, there is difference, but with the shifters, parity. Now I mentioned a difference at the back. The clutch on the Acolyte, it works well enough. Though under anything but say roots, it's going to make a little bit of noise, and there is some chain slap. The gold Zoom brakes get a gold star for their performance. And the new gearing lets this bike cook it down hills and on straightaways, but there are a couple of downsides. The new effective head tube angle means that it is less efficient to use the bars as leverage to pump with when trying to climb big hills. And some of these hills, pretty steep. It doesn't show up on camera well, but we're having problems keeping traction pushing these bikes. And you may ask, why are you pushing an e-bike? That's a topic for another video. The second downside is on me. The Acolyte works perfect, but only for 7 speeds instead of the 8, and that's because the chain that I bought is too short. I was so focused on color, so we're not getting to take advantage of that 46 tooth low gear. And I'll cover that in an upcoming video because I'm going to give this at least a second video, because I think it deserves it. Honestly, I wouldn't have guessed this would have been as good as it is. I mean, who would have thought that my whim of a project, one that I almost talked myself out of, would end up being something that I'm thinking about holding on to for a while before I strip all this off and pass the bike on. These parts, with rare exception, budget names, Roost. How many times have you heard of Roost pedals? What about Road NATO as far as cranksets? This has all the perks that I like on my personal bikes, and it all works out. With some budget names, and even the ones that we know, like Microshift, and this is their budget drivetrain. Or at least aftermarket upgraded budget drivetrain, and I love this cassettes range. Even though it's heavy, 12 to 46 tooth, that's pretty nice for under $87. And all this eye candy, I try not to get roped in by just looks alone, but I gotta admit, all this gold stuff, I mean, it does look good. And these Vigilante tires wrapped around the gold stuff, great performers. The Himalo fork, now I don't know anything really about downhill forks, but I do know so far this is holding up and it was cheap. Time will tell because I'm going to keep using this, so we'll see. And by the way, I absolutely love these U4 grips. I'm definitely going to be buying more of these. And Road NATO 2, it appears that so far their components are good value for the dollar. And there's some dual justification here because it's not just me that's impressed with all these components and how Project Comp came together. My friend that you saw riding in this video, he was so impressed he asked if he could take the bike home. He is, as far as I know, out on the trail with it right now. And you may ask, well, what does he know? Well, he owns a Polygon Xstrata some model, and he also has Project XR, a modified Mongoose XR Pro, which he also loves, but this is what he's choosing to ride right now. And I can't blame him because I'm wanting to ride it right now. Just looking at it here making this video, I'm wanting to be on this bike more than anything. Part of that could be the new, but I mean, it really is that awesome. I'm so happy with how this came together. It's so much better than I imagined that I'm starting to second guess the name Project Porkchop. It just seems disrespectful to the bike. I'm thinking Project 14K or maybe even Project Gold Digger, because it's gold and those tires really dig in. What do you think? Should I change the name to one of those two away from Porkchop? And also, what do you think about the bike in general, my creation? Would you have thought that a Mongoose Durham could have turned into this? Thumbs up if you found this video informative. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching KevCentral and have a great day.